Why does Nikola Vucevic not get the respect that he deserves? There are so many players in the NBA that don't get fair treatment from the media and the fans that watch the sport, but none stick out more than the Orlando Magic center Nikola Vucevic. He's putting up fantastic numbers all around the past few years, but it's hard to remember the last time his name was even mentioned. Nikola Vucevic was able to make his way onto the All-Star team last season without much attention, and has followed that excellent season up with another great year. As a matter of fact, his numbers are even better than what they were last year, and yet he wasn't even named an All-Star this year. But for some reason, nobody seems to care about his team or his personal success in Orlando. We normally hear the big-name centers such as Joel Embiid and Nikola Jokic, but Vucevic is closer to them than many think. Jokic has put up an average of 25.5 points, 10.5 rebounds, and 7.7 assists per game, while Vucevic is right behind him with an average of 24.7 points, 12.4 rebounds, and 4.4 assists per contest. Jokic has gotten his name floated around when talking about the MVP award at the end of the year, and yet Vucevic isn't even getting his name talked about at all, which needs to change and fast. It truly seems like the only people that take an interest in Vucevic's game are the people that happen to have him on their fantasy basketball team. Some fantasy players couldn't name a single thing about him or what team he is on other than the numbers he's able to put up on a near daily basis. He doesn't get many flashy plays like Jokic or Embiid, and their team is normally always so far behind their opponents, it doesn't allow him to take big-time shots. But no matter the circumstances, Vucevic gets the job done consistently, and that deserves recognition. Or maybe it isn't his style of play, but rather the circumstance that he currently finds himself in. The Orlando Magic have been so bad for a while now, and it seems like they refuse to get any solid talent surrounding Vucevic in order to get the most out of his years in the league. They are whiffing on draft picks and failing to attract any big-name free agents to the organization, making it a tough spot to play while also getting minimal attention from media outlets. Guys like Jokic and Embiid have a playoff-caliber team that's been in contention for the championship the last few years now, whereas Vucevic's team barely makes the playoffs, only to get swatted away by the top seeds in the league. It seems as if the only news that we heard out of Orlando was when they covered the Markelle Fultz injury that would hold him out for the year, worsening the roster around Vuce. As for accolades, Vucevic simply won't be able to win any unless he either switches teams or the organization can find better talent to help support him. There's no way possible that the NBA will give away the MVP award to a player on a horrific team that missed the playoffs, regardless of how good his stats look. The same goes for an All-Star appearance. Outside of somebody like Bradley Beal, who's been fantastic this year, people simply won't vote for a guy like Vucevic because nobody hears about his team other than when they lose a game. Ever since Fultz went down with that injury, nobody has stepped up in their rotation to replace him, and it's made their team even worse than they were at the start of the year somehow. It's also worth noting that Terrence Ross is the next leading scorer on the Magic behind Vuce, only putting up about 14 points per game, 10 less than Vucevic. If Vucevic hopes to ever get recognized for his excellent play on the basketball court, he will either need to demand recognition from the media or simply switch teams. And if he does neither, he'll have to keep his fingers crossed that their upper management will draft solid NBA players while also being able to bring in top-level talent in the open market during the offseason. They haven't proven that they can do either the last few years, and it dimmed the lights on Vucevic's career even further than before. Maybe if this Magic team was able to win consistently while Vucevic was putting up the same numbers that he is right now, he would be getting the majority of the attention when talking about Orlando. But instead, people look at records and don't think that he's impacting the game enough to be in the same conversation as guys like Jokic, Embiid, Anthony Davis, and Karl Anthony Towns. Vucevic was first drafted to the league with the 16th overall pick in the first round of the NBA draft by the Philadelphia 76ers, a place that not many people knew that Vucevic played for. It was short-lived though. He only appeared in 51 games before being involved in a blockbuster trade that involved the Orlando Magic big man Dwight Howard getting sent to the Los Angeles Lakers in a massive 4-team trade, with Vuce getting thrown to the Magic to replace Dwight. Vucevic had slowly been able to improve his level of play as the years went on, seemingly upping his points per game average every single season, with the most notable jump being his 14.2 points per game in 2013, then 19.3 points per game in 2014. Fast forward to today, and he is an all-around dominant player, even from behind the arc, which is a place that not many people see him shoot from. His days in Orlando could be limited though if the team ever decides to fully initiate a rebuild and allow Vucevic to get himself onto a better roster and compete for an NBA championship. Instead of gathering talent around him like I mentioned earlier, they opted to draft 2 big men in consecutive drafts, all while Vuce was still the best player on the roster. Those picks included Mohamed Bamba and Jonathan Isaac, with Isaac being a great addition to the team, though Bamba has incredibly inconsistent minutes due to his inconsistent play. They also made Aaron Gordon the highest paid player on the team, and while he is an outstanding dunker, he hasn't been a very good basketball player the last few years, and he doesn't impact the team the way that fans think he does. If this team doesn't retain Vucevic or trade him away to another roster, the Magic will fall off the face of the earth and gather minimal media attention, if any at all. They will immediately compete for the number 1 overall pick without him, and better get some help for him soon if they wish to run it back, like one staff member on the Magic said just a few weeks ago. Sadly, Vucevic is probably used to not getting the type of media attention that he deserves. When he first entered the NBA draft, other stars like Kyrie Irving, Klay Thompson, Kawhi Leonard, Kemba Walker, and Isaiah Thomas were also in that draft class. Those huge names pushed Vucevic down the list further and further, and even nowadays you will see people mention that draft class without including his name, which is a true shame. He also had enough of an improvement year over year to get himself into the conversation of the Most Improved Player award. However, he still got very minimal media attention despite arguably being the most improved player stats-wise, and somehow finished in 4th place in the voting for the award, with Paul George winning it that year. The 2 other players that ranked above him are no longer in the NBA as well, Larry Sanders and Gravis Vasquez. For the past 4 years, Vucevic has truly played like an all-star in this league, and has even shot the 3-pointers more consistently after watching the Splash Brothers dominate the league for so many years. But Vucevic hasn't been the only player that's been ignored in Orlando despite his play. Victor Oladipo wasn't even mentioned while he was on the roster a few years ago. When Oladipo finally left the team and took the trip over to the Indiana Pacers, he was able to truly show the world how dominant of a talent he really was, and allowed his play to speak for itself. A similar situation also happened with Tobias Harris, who was never talked about until he left and took his talents to a different organization and situation. The sad part of it all is that the best teammates that Vucevic has ever had were Ryan Anderson, Serge Ibaka, and Evan Fournier, none of which are talented enough to get you an NBA championship, although Ibaka did win one with the Toronto Raptors. It isn't even like the team has never made the postseason with him on the roster, as Orlando made it twice with Vucevic. They lost each of those series 4-1, with Vuce having a few terrible performances in that first year, but then bouncing back in their next playoff series the year after and putting up MVP-level numbers once again. The Milwaukee Bucks still nearly swept them, but he averaged 28 points, 11 rebounds, and 4 assists, while putting up a 50-40-90 shooting stretch on 37 minutes per game. And yet, you probably didn't even hear a peep about those performances, instead getting information about how this loss was expected to happen and that the Magic didn't belong in the NBA playoffs anyways because they were a terrible all-around team. Now, he is playing fantastic once again and seems more motivated than ever even though he's in an awful situation. The Magic are sitting towards the bottom of the Eastern Conference right now, despite the entire conference being downright terrible record-wise. They are 13-23 right now, but the Toronto Raptors are the 8th seed in the conference and are only at 17-19 on the year. It just doesn't make sense that a guy with the talent of Vucevic, putting up nearly 25 points per game on excellent shooting from behind the arc and from the paint, is simply not getting talked about like he should. Hopefully that changes very soon. It hurts to think about his stellar play being wasted by a team that just can't seem to function correctly. Thank you everybody so much for watching, and be sure to leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Also, remember to tune into our next video for even more outstanding content that you won't want to miss.